All right, so welcome everyone to this Q&A. Again, I want to welcome everyone. Sorry about that. I want to welcome everyone to this Q&A. Interesting thing. Interesting came up. That the Torah, or let's say better, before I actually quote it, somebody asked, there are a couple questions here, similar genre, but actually fits right in the parsha. That someone says, somebody asks, let's say better, somebody asks that if God uses Hamas as a stick, right? Famous dog and the stick parable, right? To punish wicked Jews. Why are Jews cursing Hamas? Right? Why are Jews saying Yamach Shalom? May they name be blotted out, may they rot wherever they are. If that's the will of Hashem. Isn't that like cursing God? First question. Second question is why they call these terrorist monsters? Right? Yishmaelim, if Yishmael, that was his name, right? That was Avram's son's name through Hagar, this week's parsha. Right? If Yishmael the tshuva, Yishmael repented. Isn't that an injustice to Yishmael? So similar questions. A little bit different twist in the second question. But I want to answer it with a statement from what the Torah here says this week's parsha. Genesis chapter 15, verse 8. God says, Abraham said, my Lord Hashem Elokim, whereby shall I know that I am to inherit it? In other words, Abraham says, the beginning of chapter 15, God says, don't worry, your reward's going to be very great. And he says, what do you mean? All I have is my steward, my house, right? Damascus, Eliezer. Right? I have this, slave house, me in the house. He's going to inherit me. God says, no, don't worry about it. Abraham says, yeah, you give me offspring. So God came saying, he's not going to inherit you. You're going to have a child. Right? He trusted in God, and then he asked him, how do I know? What's the proof I'm going to inherit? Right? He gets punished for this. His offspring get punished for this. Whole question exactly why. But then you have the covenant of the parts. Right? Verse 9. He said to him, take three heifers, 3 goats, 3 rams, right, and all that. Birds that didn't cut up. And then it says, verse 12, the sun was about to set, a deep sleep fell upon Avram, and he had a great darkness. Because he saw the future. So it was going to be with his progeny. What's going to happen is his offspring are going to suffer. So now in verse 13, this is the point here. And that is, he said to Abraham, to Avram, know with certain your offspring shall be aliens. They'll be foreigners of land not their own. They will serve them, they will oppress you 400 years. But also with that nation that they serve, I shall judge. They will live with great wealth. Right? Your offspring are going to leave with great wealth, but they're going to suffer. And then God says, you're going to come to your ancestors in peace, be buried in a ripe old age, blah, blah, blah. So what's going on over here? God says, or let's say better, Abraham says, how do I know I'm going to inherit? How do I know How do I know I'm going to inherit? Meaning, I want to know how you run things in the world. So different reasons potentially why his offspring get punished. But what happens? He felt this dread. God says your offspring are going to be aliens in the land on their own. They'll have to serve them. They're going to be oppressed, etc. And God says, I'm going to judge them. I'm going to judge that nation. And you're going to take out all the wealth. Very good. Now, if we would say, which we would, who's this nation? Who's the reference of this nation? Then the reference of this nation is Egypt. They came and oppressed the Jewish people. Right? A lot of questions here. One question is, if that's quote unquote what they were destined to do, why does God judge them? It's not just why does God judge them, why does he annihilate them? Why does he totally destroy them? In the book of Exodus. Yeah, that's the question. If we already know what they're going to do, right? They're going to come and oppress the Jewish people. God says they're going to punish them. But you know they're going to oppress them. Why are you going to punish them? So what's the answer? First of all, the Torah doesn't say who it is, even if we understand it's the Egyptians. Could anyone come and oppress the Jewish people for 400 years? Yes. Who did it? The Egyptians. Did the Egyptians have free will? Had free will. Did they go beyond what God wanted them to do? Yeah. So he punished them severely. So even though they had free will, doesn't mean they're not liable for punishment. So that's the answer, right? Because here the question is, at least the first question, God uses Hamas as a stick, punish the Jewish people, right? Hamas came along and said, yeah, or the Arabs or whatever you want to call them, they came along and said, yeah, we're going to try and annihilate the Jewish people. They have free will, obviously. They're going to try and annihilate the Jewish people. But if God said they were destined to do it anyway, why punish them? Right? Why punish them? They have free will. They have free will over here. Someone else could have done it. Someone else could have tried to punish the Jewish people. They're messengers. That's true. Right? So it's true. This person points out, God is using Hamas as a messenger, as a stick to punish the Jewish people. Right? God's using them to get to us in a most horrific way. Okay. Now, the next part of the question is, if that's true, why would we say, or why would anybody say, right? I would say better. Why would the Jews say and curse Hamas? Why would they say Yimach Shemoy or Yimach Shemom? May their name be blotted out, may they rot wherever they are. Right? What's the point? What is the point of cursing Hamas if God is using them as a stick? When that's the will of God. Isn't that like cursing God? I didn't mention that part of the question. Now, let's look at the question here. Let's look at the question. The Jews, and probably a lot of other people that aren't Jews, are cursing Hamas. Well, let's say just us. We'll make it easy. The Torah says there's going to be a nation. Genesis chapter 15 is going to be this week's parsha. That's going to be a nation that's going to enslave the Jewish people. It's going to make their life a misery. And God says, I'm going to judge them. Not only am I going to judge them, I'm going to take all their wealth. If they're going to come and do it anyway, God's using them as a stick. If they're messengers, why is he punishing them? That is the question. But over here, it's the same thing. The Egyptians are the punishment to the Jewish people in the desert when they come in the desert. Before they go into the desert, they have to get into Egypt. Now, could they have gotten into Assyria? Could they have gotten into the Philistines? Could they have gone to other nations? Yeah. But they ended up in Egypt. So even if they ended up in Egypt, Egypt punished them severely. Right? Absolutely severely. But they're liable. Why is God going to punish them? Because of what they did. But they're destined to do it. Anyone could have done it. Not just them. Anyone could have done it. But they came out and did it. They came out and did it over here. So even though God's using them as a stick, let's ask the question. If God is using them as a stick, and they're the messenger, the Bible says, yeah, you should thank them for working on our, character trait of anger, right? Our character trait of, whatever we're supposed to learn from this. Why can't we hate what they did? Why can we not look at what they did as being barbaric? Being animals. God used them. You're right. God used them to get to us. And anytime we lose money and something happens, God's using that person to get to us. So the reality is, why are we getting upset? Right? That's the question. Why should we get upset? So you take something like this, and you say it's God's destiny, that God knew they were going to do it. So why should we curse them? Why should we call them maggots, barbarians, animals, you fill in the blank, people less than human? Even if we say that, I agree. God's using them to punish the Jewish people. That does not negate the fact they're barbarians. Right? That does not negate the fact they're animals. That doesn't change it. That's exactly the same. I can't curse them out to lack of emunah. That would be impossible. God would never put someone in a position like that. You're going to say, I got to love them for what they're doing because they're using me like a stick. They're being used as a stick? I don't think so. Anyone's seen the pictures, that people are less than human. God's using them to punish us. It was a divine decree. You're right. Everybody agrees. I mean, shouldn't say everybody, but if you're holding my Torah mitzvahs, you see it's a divine decree. Okay? Even if God's using them as messengers, do we have to look at them, and hug them and say, thank you very much. I got to work on my emunah. I got to work on my belief in God because this doesn't make sense. Why they're being slaughtered in such a way? No. Right? In general, I would say that. Right? And the whole of Avos would say that. What am I learning from this? What am I gaining from this? So to speak. But if you're going to use that logic, then you're going to assume that what they did, regardless of how barbaric it was, you're going to use that logic and say they're not punishable. See, that's what the question is. Even if, I don't think the person asking the question that way, but that's what the question is. If you're going to tell me why are we cursing them, because what they did is horrific. What they did is subhuman. Subhuman. You want to tell me we can't be disgusted by that? Of course we can be disgusted by it. We can hate what they did. We can also look at the same time, God's using them to get to us. And that is a horrific decree. That 100% is a horrific decree. So we're not allowed to curse them? We're not allowed to say that they're not human? Just because God's using them as a stick? Give another example. Example I always give. Person driving down the street. Yeah, sees out of the corner of their eye, another car coming this way. Person's got their head in the phone, going 60 miles an hour, 90 km, right, 90 kilometers per hour. Bam! Smash right into your car. You hit another car. Yeah, your car is like totaled. You're in the hospital. Person's in the hospital, a lot of pain, a lot of surgeries. They survived. The last thing they remember is seeing that person with their head in a phone. Now, what's the first thing they're saying when they wake up? They're like, am I alive? How am I alive over here? You know, hopefully they'll thank God they're alive. What about the other person? Regardless of what happened to them. Do you think the person who's in a tremendous amount of pain? Do you think if that person's in a tremendous amount of pain, you know, they're thinking what's with the other person? They're not cursing the other person out for what they did. Total their car. They're in tremendous amount of pain, many surgeries. You know, they might not be able to walk. Not saying they're going to be, I mean, whatever, we can make it really gruesome. Person becomes a paraplegic. Because this person was texting that had in their phone. So you're going to tell me, according to the office, which is true, God's going to say, hey, I use this person to get to you. This is your punishment, okay? So the office would say, I should thank him for having working me all kinds of different things. Okay, also true. Can I be disgusted at the same time that this person had his head so stuck up his phone that when he sneezed, he blew his brains out? Yeah, I can't be disgusted. Why can't I be disgusted by that? Why is that a contradiction? I can hate what the person did. You're now a paraplegic, God forbid. Because this person has his head stuck up his phone. The person was negligent. They're guilty. Even if God's using them as a stick, are they guilty? Oh, yeah. They are guilty. They're guilty for damages on the car. They're guilty. How much time this person's going to miss work? They're guilty. Medical bills. A lot of things they're guilty over here. But you can tell me, oh, shouldn't be guilty. God's using them as a stick. They're guilty. Does that mean I have to like what they did? We always say, yeah, I should go up and hug them and this and that. You know, and thank them for working on my anger, working on my emunah. Yeah, that's probably the right way to look at it. But a person can't get angry because this person was totally negligent. Drunk driver, even better. Drunk driver. You know, run someone over. You know, and I know someone, that's what happened. I married a woman that was in a wheelchair. How'd she become in a wheelchair? She got run over by a drunk driver. It's a teenager. You know, she functioned, they have a family, this, that. Is she ecstatic this drunk driver ran her over? You know, and made her go through what she has to go through the rest of her life? She's lucky she's alive, true. Thankful she's alive, true. Can she despise drunk drivers? Is she allowed to despise drunk drivers? Why not? It doesn't matter if God used them as a stick. That's the whole point. Even if God used them as a stick, is the person a drunk driver? Should he got behind the wheel? No. Is the person negligent? Oh, yeah. That person's 100% negligent. Can you hate the fact that the person was negligent, ruin their lives in different ways? You say maybe in a certain way, the lack of emunah, maybe. But you can hate what they did, even if God uses them as a stick. You can hate what they did. You can absolutely hate what they did. Right? It's not a contradiction. Even if God's using them as a stick, not a contradiction. Because you're saying, but it's the will of God. You're right. We're not negating that. God used them to get to you. Very good. God used them to get to you. Okay, and do I have to like what they did? I don't necessarily have to like what they did to work on my emunah. I should really thank the person who helped me working on my anger and different things. That's true. But in general, do I have to like drunk drivers? Do I have to like barbarians that are subhuman? Now, if God would expect that, no, who's holding them? Nobody's holding them. So that's why it's not a contradiction. Right? Second part of the question, or second question, really. Someone asked, which is similar. Why do we call these terrorists monsters? Because they are. They are monsters. That's what they are. No question about it. What do we care if Yishmael did tshuva? You're right. Even at the end it says Yishmael did tshuva, Yishmael repented. Okay. What does that have to do with his offspring? It says in this week's parsha, he's a wild man. He's got his hand in everyone. Everyone has his hand in him. He's wild. Who cares if he did tshuva? What about the rest of his offspring? What about generations later? They act subhuman. So what do we care if he did tshuva or not? Does it matter? He repented? So good. The great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather repented. Very good. And what about all his relatives? What about all his relatives? We don't care about his relatives? He repeated that, whitewashes everything else. Sounds like Christianity, doesn't it? That'd be great. Let's tap into that. I have to take responsibility. The great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather took responsibility for everybody, for all generations. That's beautiful. We can rummage, pillage, rape, we can do all these things. Great. That whitewashes it? Because he repented? I don't think so. Doesn't matter if he repented or not. His offspring are liable. They are totally liable. Right? And the other part of the question is, isn't that an injustice to Yishmael? No. Yishmael is who he is. Right? He repented. Very good. He fixed himself up. Okay. I don't have an issue with that. And his offspring are animals. What's the difference? I would just say it gives Yishmael a bad name. True. He repented. Okay. You see his offspring repenting? Yeah, some of them. There are some coming out against what's going on. And hiding for their lives because they'll get killed otherwise. But there are some, okay. So they're doing like the great-great-great-great-grandfather. And what about everyone else? What about all the other animals in between? They make the grandfather look bad? Yeah. That's not an injustice to him. He repented. Very good. Okay. Did his offspring repent? And then all the murders and maimings and this and that, did they repent? They have remorse? They feel guilty? I don't think so. I would say better. I would say a little bit different. I would say, Yishmael may be running, turning over in his grave over here. He might be saying, with my offspring, they're missing the whole point. They got to tame it. You're right. Character trait is a wild man, but you got to tame it. You got to use it the right way. There's not the right way. It's like acting less than a human, like an animal. You're not going to be proud over here. He's disgusted. Should be disgusted. But I would think it'd be great. It would be great if he just whitewashed everything. And he said, because of my repentance, no one has to repent anymore. I did it for everybody. That's Christianity. That essentially is Christianity. Right? So, if he whitewashes it, nobody takes responsibility. Right? So, at the end of the day, so this question is, didn't he do tshuva? Didn't he repent? He did, so. And his offspring are a bunch of animals, all of them. Yeah? They're all a bunch of animals. So if they're all a bunch of animals, what do I care he repented? The fact that they didn't go in his path and repent, that makes him look bad. True. That makes him look bad. But the fact that they're acting the way they are, in general, throughout the millennium, right? We know exactly who they are, what their character traits are, right? That's not an injustice to Yishmael. That's Yishmael saying, I'm disgusted by the way my offspring act. But even by him, that he repented. Again, let's understand. They're a wild man. They have their hand in everything. Everything has a hand in them. They're hefker, they're ownerless. That's why they can do suicide bombings and this and that, because it doesn't mean anything. Their bodies, their lives, they're ownerless. It's the only way to understand it, right? So if that's true, that's who they are. That's what their nature is. Now, people are going to say this is being an Islamophobe, right? Say, oh, you're all against Islam, this, that. This is what the Torah says who Yishmael is. That's why they don't like it. That's why the Quran blasts us for blasphemy and all kinds of things. Because we make Yishmael look bad. Maybe. But the Torah says what their character traits are. Does that mean they can't overcome it? Not necessarily. They have to work hard. It's part of their nature. Right? It's part of their nature, but they could overcome it. There are some that do overcome it. But that is who they are. Right? No one wants to hear that either. That, how do you change someone's inherent nature? You're going to have to work really hard. Really, really hard. Right? So if you say this is how they act, very good. Why? That's how they are. That's who they are. Now, some of them may not act that way. Some of them may be more civilized. Okay? Goes against their own nature, but they have to work hard to overcome it. Because it's really a part of them. So in essence, I would say the opposite. I would say Yishmael should be disgusted by his offspring because they didn't come to the same conclusion as he did. He repented. Doesn't matter his character traits. He overcame them. He was able to overcome them. And he repented. Very good. Very good. He repented. You see any of his offspring repenting? They're not repenting. Their goal beyond the shadow of a doubt is to kill Jews, get the Jewish people out of Israel. That's their goal. Now, you'll tell me it's a rogue government. Maybe not everyone believes it, but they're the ones in power. Okay, but they probably indoctrinated everyone anyway. So it's really a moot point. Could some people overcome it? Yes. Are the majority going to overcome it? No. Why not? Because it's inherent in of themselves. It's inside them. When something that strong is inside a person, it's very hard to fix. Now, someone will say, so it's not their fault. Totally not their fault. Why isn't it their fault? They're born that way. Like someone told me a homosexual was born that way. I go, they never found the gene for it. Doesn't matter. He's born that way. Can't change it. Of course he can change it. There are psychologists can help such people. Can change it. Yeah. Is it an easy thing to change? I wouldn't say it's so easy. But there are people who've had success. Okay. Now, does that person have an evil inclination like everyone else? Yeah. Is it a normal evil inclination? No. Does God want you to act on it even if it's, let's say, part of your genes? No. And let's say I'd be very generous and say there's a homosexual gene. Let's say. So if a person would act on it, are they guilty? They're guilty. Torah says you're guilty. It's part of your psyche. It's part of who you are. So you're going to say it's impossible to change. Not impossible. Not impossible. Really hard? Yeah. Impossible? No. Well, something you got to work at. Something you got to work at. So if they have certain character traits that are ingrained in them, yeah, it's going to be hard to fix. But we all have this. We have lazy genes. We have wanting to eat too much genes. We have miserly genes. We have a lot of bad genes. Now, even if you have a lot of bad genes, God says, I don't want you to act on it. I want you to work hard, even if it's a part of you. Does that mean you can't uproot it? No. Does it mean you have a certain disposition? Yes. And everyone has it. Everyone has different dispositions they have to work on. Some of them are harder, some are others. Others, other people have other things that are more difficult, whatever it is. Even if it's a part of you. It makes it much more difficult to fight. Okay. Doesn't mean you can't. So I would say that no. I would say that the fact that Yishmael I would say the fact that Yishmael repented is hope for his offspring. That he brought that into the world, that he could repent, even though he's given, a difficult psyche to deal with, right? He's given difficult DNA, okay? We're all given difficult DNA in different ways, okay? Question is how we react to them. Question is what we do with it. Yeah. That doesn't make them not guilty. And that doesn't mean I have to like what they do. It doesn't mean that at all. And that's not a contradiction. Right? That is definitely not a contradiction. That is the that I would say is the answer to that. So someone that points out they're guilty, they're being the stick is wrong. God's using them. They're choosing to be used as a stick. They got free will. They're not being forced. They're jumping up ready to do it. So they're guilty. I have to like what they do. I have to like what they do. Someone points out the righteous are not chosen to act as a stick by God. The righteous. Why would they act as a stick? God's not going to use them as a stick to hurt somebody. God's going to use someone else to get to somebody, right? And they're going to choose to do it themselves. They're going to say, this is the right thing. These people, indoctrinated or not, doesn't matter. They inherently believe we have to wipe out the Jewish people in Israel. However, by whatever means. Men, women, children, it doesn't matter. Yeah, and we should kill them in horrific ways. To them it doesn't matter. Take a righteous person? You're going to use a righteous person for a stick? Absolutely not. The person going to be used as a stick is the person who God feels is the right person to do what he's going to do. But he was going to do it anyway. Right? It's not like, he doesn't have free will. Of course he got free will. Right? What happened with the Egyptians? What happened with the Egyptians is why they have to get punished so severely? Because they acted out they did very severe things. So God nailed them measure for measure, destroyed them. Doesn't mean they're not guilty. It doesn't say God chose the Egyptians to do it. They chose it for themselves. They chose it for themselves. So they're guilty. Do I have to like the fact that the Egyptians, because the Jews were in Egypt, 80% of the Jews didn't come out. Do I have to like the fact that what the Egyptians did to the Jewish people? I have to like it. God used the Egyptians as a stick to get to the Jewish people to destroy them. Okay. I have to like what the Egyptians did, and they made their lives bitter, right? And all the midrashim say how bad they were, and the horrific things they did. That's not a contradiction. They're being used to get the Jewish people. Okay. Who says I have to like what they do? Then we don't have to like what they do. So it wasn't the activity in Sodom also subhuman, yeah? Yeah, they're also disgusting people. That's true. But Avram Avinu never complains, right? Avram, now, is an interesting thing. Gotta watch my video on YouTube, on my YouTube channel at Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism. Spoke about it one year. Avram understood these people are bad. Why is he praying that there should be 10 righteous people? So that's the whole discussion. Right? That is the whole discussion. He knew they were wicked. He knew they were bad. So if he knew they were bad, why is he praying for them? Legitimate question. Right? So you got to see my video over there. But there's a whole discussion here. There's a whole discussion. The commentaries ask. There's a whole discussion. And that is, if he knows how bad they are, and he knows how evil they are, what's the problem? Can't pray for them. Wants to pray they should be saved. I'm not saying you should pray for them to die. That's a different problem. But to actually say there might be 10 righteous people there. He didn't know how bad they were. He knew how bad they were. So there's an inherent question. How's he praying for them? That's the question. Yeah, that is the question. So also, someone points out God chose Babylon, yeah. They also suffered tremendously. Again, keep in mind, people do evil things. Even if God is using them to get to us, who says I have to like what they do in general? You're going to say, is that what the Hopes of Levels brings out? I have to look at it with proper emunah. Okay. See, there are a lot of things we can't understand. There are many, many things we can't understand. One of them is why people suffer. In general. Even though we mentioned, the past few weeks, they go to a concert or whatever, this festival. There's a Buddha there. It's on Shabbos. It's on a festival. Writings on the wall. Is God happy what they did? No. Is that the reason it happened? The decree was already made before Rosh Hashanah. There was already going to be a decree. Right? So it had to be, there were other things that these people must have done in order to be liable for death. In that way. How do we understand it? Very hard to understand. But nobody's guiltless. Nobody is guiltless. Yeah, so someone asked, am I cruel if I'm happy to see what is happening for Palestinians? No, that's not being cruel. That's not being cruel. Because they're getting just punishment. God is dealing with them, right? They're going to get punished in a major way. If you would say, I want them to suffer, and I want them to, I want their eyeballs plucked out and their nails ripped off and like all these things, that's a problem. That's the problem. That you're not allowed to do. God will take care of them. You don't have to worry. God will take care of business. To want God to be more cruel and this and that, then you're not allowed to ask him. Right? So people say, but you got all these innocent people there. You got women and children, and some of them couldn't leave, but blah, blah, blah. They're being used as human shields, right? You're right. But so what do you do? You walk in a building, you got these terrorists, and you got all these human shields. You got grenades, you got other things, they're all booby trapped. What do you do? It's not an easy situation. Might just have to kill everybody. Right? The whole thing over here is, I guess it's not popular to say. I just told someone earlier, I'm surprised I didn't get hammered for saying it. I said the whole place is booby-trapped. Israelis are going to go in. It's going to be a major bloodbath. God forbid. Hopefully they don't have to go in. Going to be a major bloodbath. So what do I have? What do I have? You say just wipe them all out. Mass genocide. It's the only way to stop it. That is the only way to stop it. But they'll get flack. They'll get a lot of flack for doing it. They're trying to be so humane, okay? But being humane is going to cost lives. Right? So that's the question someone asked a while ago. Right? What about dropping the bomb on here in Hiroshima or Nagasaki during World War II? Killed tens of thousands of people. But you saved thousands of lives. Right? You basically, killed all these people with this massive bomb, while at the same time you saved thousands and thousands of lives. So halachically is an interesting question. Are you allowed to do that? It's mass murder. So I'll just say in general, comes to war, you don't have to be cruel. You got to do what it takes to survive, right? So on the one hand, you're going to say that's mass murder, men, women, children, this, that, mass murder. True. On the other hand, what happened? They surrendered. And that saved thousands of lives. So you might say, well, the ends justify the means. The ends justify the means. Right? The ends justify the means. So if the ends justify the means, you're saving lives. You're saving lives. Saving thousands of lives. A lot of people are going to die. So how are we looking at war? Is war fair? Not fair. Innocent people may die. Soldiers may die. Soldiers may die. Others may die. Might be torture. There are a lot of things can happen. But you're saving lives. Right? Food for thought. Everyone see Palestinian social media, calling Jews pigs, this, that. Right? I report the comments. Okay. Listen, anti-Semitism rising. It's an all-time high. You got people everywhere in the world calling for death to the Jews. You got in England, you got in France, you got in Germany, you got all these places having these pro-Palestinian rallies and different things. Sorry, pro-Hamas, whatever. Boggles the mind in a certain way. Because they're calling out, this is not 1933 or 1939. They're calling for the destruction of the Jewish state and destruction of Jews everywhere. That's disconcerting. Should be disconcerting. Yeah. But you see how strong the hatred is. This is what's supposed to be in the end of days. You see how strong that hatred is, even with all the images of what happened. These horrific images. Yeah. So world opinion, for the most part, still on the side of the Jewish people. That will turn if they go in and civilians start dying. Even if they're being used as human ships. That is going to change. I'm not going to say it's going to change overnight. More civilians that die, that's going to change. So what Israel's saying is they're not these are military targets. They're using them as human shields, set off missiles and different things. So that place is a target to be destroyed. So you're going to say women will get killed, children will get killed, grandmothers will get killed, right? Grandfathers will get killed, uncles will get, you're right. And they'll die. Once those images start coming out, and the quote unquote atrocities of genocide and murder by Israel, tide's going to turn. Tide is going to turn in the media because they're going to say, you can't strike like that. You can't kill women and children. But the Israelis are showing, and they keep saying it over and over again, they're using human shields. It's our right to defend. If they put them in the way, it's not our fault. Now, logically, that's true. When you start seeing images of kids being killed and women being killed, people aren't going to stand for it. Israeli aggressors, and look what they're doing. They're going to forget what happened 2 weeks ago. They're going to forget very quickly what happened 2 weeks ago. That's going to be the scary part. On the other hand, this could be the beginning of the end also, but even so, right? Even so, you got to see. You got to see really what's behind it over here. So someone here asks, 1 second. Hashem punishes people without a stick. Yeah, we have to be completely thankful for that. I don't know, what's the difference? What's the difference if he punishes with person loses control of a car, smashed into a wall and dies? God didn't use a stick. Is it better that way than if someone else hit them and they died? God's got a lot of ways to take people out of this world. A lot of ways. Is it better he doesn't use a stick? I don't know, what's the difference? I don't know if it's any better. Right? I don't think it's any better. It's just, okay, so he didn't use a stick. And I don't know if it changes anything. Right? Something like that, I would say it's more direct. Person did it themselves, or there was no intermediary. Right? So you could say that's more direct. Right? In other words, that's God saying, I don't need intermediaries here. I don't need to use this stick. I'll do it myself. Right? I'll throw him off a cliff. I'll make his car spin out of control. I'll make this happen. I'll make that happen. That's more direct. True. Right? Maybe that's the answer. Is it better showing God's intervening himself? He's not using anybody. Just like what happened in Egypt. Right? We say Nagada. Every Passover. Not through an angel, not through an intermediary. God did it himself. They can say if something happens without any intermediary, without any stick, so to speak, what do I have? What do I have over here? God doing it himself. So you say maybe in some ways it's better. I don't have intermediary. I have God interact. Yeah, he's still taking your life. He's still taking your life. So is it a better thing? I don't know. I don't know if there's any difference. More personal connection because God's doing it himself. I would always say that by what we call a mises neshika. When a person dies in their sleep, that's like God kissed them and their soul came out. That I could hear is a better thing. Right? That's the best way to go. If you're going to die, that's the best way to go. Right? God takes you personally, he gives you that kiss and you die. Right? Your soul goes out. Right? That I could hear is better. And anything else, I don't know. I don't know if there's any, I don't know if there's any major difference whether it's done through a stick or not. Can doing mitzvahs help change a person's nature? Absolutely. Mission Pirkei Avos. Mission ethics of our father says person does the right thing. Mitzvah goes mitzvah. Person does the mitzvah, he wants to do more mitzvahs. Person does the sin, God forbid, he'll continue to do more sin. Right? So mitzvahs can change what we do. Mitzvahs can change. Mitzvahs can change our mentality. Yeah, they can. Anytime you do a mitzvah, you draw closer to God. Whether we understand it or we don't understand it, doesn't matter. Right? Whatever mitzvah is, your soul is being elevated by doing it. So that can change the way a person thinks. That can change the way a person acts, but it has to be seen. Obviously, in the bigger picture, you might not necessarily feel it. There are times where a person does an act of chesed. They help somebody out. in whatever situation. So if they help someone out in a certain situation, they feel good. They don't, they're not trying to make the person feel subservient to them, but they feel good. Why do they feel good? Because they help someone else. That has an effect on who they are. They want to help other people, right? Not just to show what they can do, not just for their own ego, because they generally want to help, right? It's not for them; it's for other people, right? So the more a person wants to do the right thing, the more it for sure changes the nature. It should change the nature, for good. Someone here mentioned Hashem would just make himself known to the world. Yeah, but he doesn't. That's not going to happen until the Messiah comes. Right? The problem is we live in a world of Hester b'toch Hester panim. There's hiddenness. Hiddenness within hiddenness. That's what it is. Right? We can't know until the end of days. We're not going to know until the end of days. So the problem is, as I would agree, the problem is we see a lot of things we don't understand. We don't understand, they don't make any sense. Right? It's very hard to understand. You can tell we can understand this party and desecration of Shabbos and other things, but just the way it happened, and the the horrific way, etc. You say, but they deserve punishment. Whole families massacred. Babies being, hands cut off, heads cut off. I mean, barbaric. Barbaric. Even if you tell me they're all liable for death penalty, okay. Yeah, even so, for whatever it is. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. For sure. But at the end of the day, it's a horrific thing. You can say, wow, that's their atonement. They're in a, now their soul went up and they're in a higher place and this and that. Okay, right? That can be understood in different ways. I don't have an issue with that. But I would say that it's still a horrific way to go. It's still a sad thing. And even if they were liable, there were people trying to save them. They got killed. What about soldiers who got taken out of their tanks and mutilated? Killed and bodies mutilated. Trying to save lives. First responders killed. You didn't want to tell me, the people there had it coming, whatever, for what they did. What about everybody else? What about everybody else? Most of the people who were killed, unfortunately, were civilians. Right? That is true. But there's always first responders. Someone went, got out of his, got out of his, his van or whatever, killed on the spot. Killed on the spot. Trying to save lives. That make any sense? You're gonna say you had to come in also. And it's not hard to make sense out of it. Yeah, it's one thing you do these other things, this person's trying to save lives. So you can say in the line of battle, people can get killed. You're right. You're right. Question is, you got to see the bigger picture. So you're gonna say, well, they were gonna, that was their day to die. Okay. I'm saying, in the Holocaust, when you look at the Holocaust, the numbers are just huge. 6 million people, 1.5 million children. The way they died, the way they were treated, the way they were tortured. They were starved, they were, experiments, all kinds of things. Right? Unbelievable torture. So it's not just the sheer numbers, it's how it happened. And when you see how it happened, you hear how it happened. And here you see the images. When you hear how it happens, you're just like, you're grossed out. It's disgusting. How can people, act like that and all that? It's true. Right? That is very true. The issue is, even if you say they had it coming for different reasons, but look what happened to them. Men, women, children. So yeah, we can understand certain things from the Holocaust. Yeah. Intelligence does not breed morality. That's one thing. Never rely on man. That's the second thing. But it's not just the sheer numbers. It's just how systematic it was. and how organized it was. And just the sheer torture and everything else. So even if you say, okay, all these people had to die, and there was a divine decree, for whatever reason, okay, but did they have to die in such a way? Makes it harder. Makes it much harder. Right? I'm not going to get graphic here. Right? But these are horrific images. Right? That's what we have to learn. Right? It's not just what happens. It's not just, you can tell me they did this, they did that, they could be liable for death penalty, different thing. Okay. I don't have an issue with that. But look what happens. Look at the sheer brutality. Families gone down and worse. Yeah. There's a message. Very strong message. You're going to say, well, we know the enemy is going to be more careful in the army and this and that. The message is they hate Jews. They want to slaughter every single Jew in Israel and all around the world. And the message is they're not going to be able to do it because God's going to save them. It's going to save the Jewish people and the Messiah is going to come. I'm not going to say it's going to come right now, or tomorrow, the next day, but that's what it's gearing up for. Yeah, so there is a purpose. God's not telling us. We're not privy to the information, but things are being set up in a certain way. But you have to ask the question, why in such a horrific way? You say, look what they did. Even so, even if you're going to tell me, if you can tell me that's the case, I will tell you like this. Go online, which I don't recommend. Go online and look at these families that were slaughtered. Look at these families that were burned to death. Look at these kids, the babies that their heads were chopped off. Well, they deserved it. And you're not human. If you can say such a thing, and look at these images, and you can say, well, they had it coming. They absolutely had it coming. And you're not human. Because even if they did, they say, this is the repercussions of our action. So I would tell you, okay, go call up the families and tell them that. Go tell the loved ones that survived and go tell them that. Spit at you. They'll kill you themselves. The person may deserve that because you're a fool. Who's going to say such a thing? You might think it's true. We may all think it's true. Okay, and sheer brutality, how can you say that? Even if they deserved it. Even if they deserved it. Right? There are other lessons to take out besides that. What happens in Israeli-Russian relationship? Oh, very interesting. Not sure. I think that, Mr. Putin, I think, is still upset, Israel, even though Israel's kind of neutral in the war with Ukraine. I think Putin's upset that Israel's not backing them. I did hear, someone tell me, and I don't know if it's true or not, I'll just throw this out there, that these Hamas people were trained. They train more than a year. The more than a year, they say, one of their people that they caught, testified or whatever, they beat it out of them, basically, and said, they're trained for more than a year, to do this. So most people think who they get trained by Iran, right? They're the ones putting the money, they train them, right? Or Hezbollah, whoever, right? They got trained. Someone told me, and again, I don't know if this is true, but someone told me there are like a dozen people from Putin's, I don't know, special army, special forces, whatever, that were in Gaza and other places training them. People forgetting about him, what's going on, put the pressure back on Israel, so to speak, and, take him out of the limelight, what's going on in Ukraine. Now, is that true? Can't say it's true. I don't know. I'm just saying, this is what someone told me. I didn't, this has not been verified. It's not been verified. Now, would it necessarily surprise me? Interesting. I mean, Russia looks really bad right now. They look bad for the last year. What's going on? Certainly in the Ukraine, 100%. But would I go that far to say, Putin would do such a thing, start this whole thing in order to take the limelight off him, and that, he's not going to be under pressure now, be under less pressure because everyone will focus on this. They'll forget about Ukraine. Right? Interesting. So, yeah, Putin, I think, is very upset because it was not backing him. They have a halfway decent relationship. The problem is that, he's helping out Iran, and he's got stuff going on in, what do you call it? He had stuff going on in, where is it? In Syria, etc. So, yeah, kind of, shady person over here and what's going on. But that relationship, seems to sour. Now, again, is that true that they did it? I don't know. Food for thought. It's an interesting thing. Those other grandparents were Jewish, maybe. Who knows? Who knows if they were or not? But doesn't matter. A Russian can have Jewish blood. Doesn't really mean much because they're all brainwashed atheists. So even if they were Jewish, probably hit it anyway. Who to respond to someone who says they don't feel any pity for the Palestinians? How do you respond? Listen, there was somebody was saying there was a group, I think it was on college campus somewhere, that they were saying that that what Israel's doing is apartheid, right? Like what's going on in South Africa, right? It's apartheid. So they said, like, what do you mean? People getting jobs, people doing this. And the person, like, probably wasn't the best person to ask because they didn't really know anything about what's going on. They're just like sitting behind a desk or something. So they had no idea. They asked them like a whole bunch of questions. They couldn't answer. Yeah, they couldn't answer. Right. So like the joke is, you say, knock, knock, who's there? Palestinian people. Palestinian people who? Exactly. No such thing. Right? You go through the history if you wanted to. You go through the history, saying that, never such a people, and, all this, and, they've been treated better than anyone else has ever been treated, in any other Arab country or whatever. But, if they're being indoctrinated by Hamas, etc., then yeah, that's gonna be bad. But listen, even the Arabs here, even within Israel proper, they're being indoctrinated by their own people. They got books calling, educational books to their kids, calling for the destruction of Israel. They don't want to live in peace. Not interested in living in peace. So they say, well, we brought it upon them. History says not that way. History says they brought it upon themselves. There is no such thing as the Palestinian people anyway. You can go back and prove that. Mark Twain came in the late 1800s. There wasn't anybody here. There weren't any Palestinians. There's nobody here. You think, oh, the Hungary, Austrian Empire, Hungarian Empire, whatever. You think people were complaining when they were here that they closed all the places of the Palestinians and put them in refugee camps? They weren't here. We made them into quote unquote a Palestinian people. The Israelis made them into a Palestinian people. Big mistake. Big mistake. Because you're giving credibility that they don't have. There are people from, there were Lebanese people here, there were Beirut people here, there were people from, Jordan or whatever. There's no nation here. It was never a nation here. Right? So, you can't feel pity for someone who brought it upon themselves. And it's a problem with their leadership. Their leadership is telling them to do this. We bought land legally. What do they want? It's punishable by death for an Arab to sell land to Jews in Israel. Forbidden for Arabs to own land anyway, any non-Jew to own land in Israel, according to Jewish law. But regardless, they have laws on their books, so to speak. So who's bringing it upon, we're doing it to them? Well, land legally. They have to go back and check history, which they won't. Rothschild spent a lot of money for Jews to buy land here. Dig out the swamps. A lot of Jews died from malaria and other things. Draining the swamps and making it livable and all that. They were the real Zionists. Students of the Vilna Gaon were the first, people to come here. They were the true Zionists. You take them a little bit of a walk through Jewish history, through Israeli history. Real Israeli history, not revisionist history. It's a different issue. Different issue. I think it's in the top 3 of the world's biggest lies in the world. One of them is Christianity, one's evolution. I think the third thing is the Palestinian people. It might be even, maybe I might put it up number 2. Evolution is a pretty good one also. Right? It's people don't know anything about history. They don't learn it. They don't, whatever. They just keep up to date with what the media tells them. And the media's filling them with all these lies. Essentially with all these lies. Are they gonna sit there and look into it? I doubt it. I doubt it. Let me see, there are other questions here. Well, the resurrection happened during the Gog. One second. Is it true that only 6,000 Jews will survive Gog and Magog? No idea. No idea. I mean, it says a third are going to die, third of the world's going to die, third are going to survive, and a third, will be injured. Question: how many of them survive? So that's a lot of people to die, right? So I would say anyone who's holding by Torah mitzvahs, as a Jew or non-Jew, hopefully they survive. 6,000? No. I would think the number is going to be higher than that, significantly higher than that. But the Messiah, has to come at least within the 6,000th year, right? Maybe that's what you mean. That we're in 5784, so that means you got another 216 years before the Messiah has to come. The God has to force the Messiah to come. It's only going to be 6,000 years, right, of this world. So yeah, the world can only last for 6,000 years. But the fact that only 6,000 Jews, I think it's going to be more than that. Those are the third of the whole population. Yeah. Yeah. So you're talking, I don't know, we got 10 billion in the world, more. Well, they got 50 billion in the world, a third of that's going to survive. And I guarantee, you heard it right here live, anyone who's in idolatry, that they don't repent, so knock off all the Christians, knock off all the Hindus. That's a good part of the world right there. Right there. Jews are intermarried, you knock them out. Right, as well. Unless somehow they repent before. But if you're holding at some level within Torah mitzvahs, keeping Torah mitzvahs, hopefully you'll be safe. Is that a guarantee? No, but hopefully it should guard us. Hopefully it should guard us. Some people are worried, but what don't they return to? Yeah. First, I think it's a great thing Canada wants them. Great, let Canada take them. Canada took 25,000 Syrians. They had all kinds of problems, like everyone else. Germany had problems with them. France had problems with them. Others had problems with them. From Syria, the Syrian refugees. Yeah, you want to take these Gazans? Good luck. Good luck. Anyone's going to take them. Well, the resurrection happened during the war of Gog and Magog. After. Right? It'll be after the Messiah comes. Resurrection's after the Messiah comes. The question exactly when. The world had to be destroyed first, and then there's resurrection, or whatever. The whole question exactly when, but it will not be before Gog and Magog. Gog and Magog will happen first, and then the Messiah will come, and sometime after that, there'll be resurrection. The question is exactly what that time frame is. Jewish people experienced murder, extermination, right? It's happened all over. Yemen, Spain. Yeah. It's happened all over. So, I mean, there've been expulsions, there have been murders, pogroms. This isn't new. This is just the problem is you're seeing it live. That's the You see the being live stream. That's that's really the problem. That's really the problem here. But yeah, if you look at Jewish history through Tanakh, it's like a sine curve. Jewish people do the right thing, they go up. Jewish people do the wrong thing, they go down. It's like up and down, up and down. That's what happens, right? We do God's will, everything's good, more or less. We do the wrong thing, their pogroms, their expulsions, and all that. Someone, that was kind of funny actually. Someone mentions most of the concerns of Palestinian heritage is actually the Lebanese or Egyptian. Yeah, it could be. Or in Jordan also, before they went to Jordan. But yeah, that's probably true. There was a book on history of Palestinian people published by an Israeli, of course. Amazon took it down. Yeah, listen, unfortunately, books like that have can have a long time span. I mean, you have, it's very hard to imagine. Today, you still have Hitler Machshmov Zichro's book, may his name be blotted out, may rot, wherever he is. Mein Kampf, it's been translated, I don't know how many languages. Unbelievable how many languages that book's been translated in and still around. It's mind-boggling. Yeah, other questions, let me see. Mixed uniforms they wear, some would be the youth, yeah. Do you know about a kosher way for know how to study psychology? Becoming a Muna therapist. Psychology is hard. A lot of things in psychology, even they quote unquote Torah psychology, could be absolutely heresy. So, psychology in general can be based on just a lot of false ideas. So, you gotta be careful. For a non-Jew and a Jew, no matter. For a non-Jew to study psychology, also a problem. Because a lot of heresy. So is there a kosher way? I don't know. I'm not an expert in all these, courses, but problem is, I know someone whose daughter studying, I think probably finished studying, for a degree in psychology or a master's in psychology, and there are things they have to go through that's diametrically opposed to Torah. That's being nice, right? Total opposite spectrum of what Torah is. That's a problem. But if you have to go through it, is there any kosher way to do it? I don't think there's any kosher way to do it. Because I think a lot of things that are going to be out there are traits. So what do? They try and find one that's like, somewhat better than others, because there is going to be material you're going to come across that you're going to have to deal with that just is totally against Torah, right? So do I know some that are better than others? No, I haven't really looked into it, but I do know that there are some that are extremely problematic. But I don't know offhand, if there's some that have been vetted, meaning that a lot of the bad stuff's been taken out or not. So I can't say that I can't say. Yeah, any other, a lot of these things, the person gets a degree, do it online, there will be things that are problematic. Now, does that mean you shouldn't do it? You gotta have a lot of emunah, you gotta keep your head on straight, and you have to have your head based in Torah, to do it. I'm not, maybe you take, let's say 20, 30 classes, you could have a few that are definitely problematic. I don't think there's any question. Or you might have some material in a lot of classes that are problematic, that go against Torah. The problem's going to be if you have to defend something, let's say you got to write a paper or something on something that is problematic. Now, could you do that? You're not saying it's right? You're definitely not saying, you're not saying it's right. But, if you had to, let's say, I don't know, write a major paper on something that is, let's just say, for lack of a better term, is disgusting in God's eyes. Yeah, in the Torah. So you say, but I'm writing lies here. You're right. But even if you're writing lies, and you're passing the course. So that doesn't necessarily mean you believe in it. Some people would say you have to stay away from it altogether. It's okay. If you're going to stay away from it altogether, how are you going to find any courses that don't have heresy in it? And you'd be stuck, right? So even if you have to do that, doesn't necessarily mean it's forbidden because you don't believe in it. And if you don't believe in it, but you have to defend it in the paper, that doesn't, again, that doesn't mean you believe it. You believe in it. Now, could that have a negative effect on a person by doing it? It could. That you have to be careful. That you don't want to have a negative effect on you, but yeah, that could happen. That definitely could happen. That's why it's a problem in general. The person can say, "Oh, I'm very strong, it won't happen," blah blah blah. Everyone talks a good game, but when you're deep into it, and it can change the way you think. That's why university is so dangerous. For exactly that reason, things can change what you think, and what you do, and they can make a person heretic. Right? There was a famous story with Balatanya. Right, the first Rebbe Lubavitch that had a student wanted to go to university. So the Balatanya said, you got to be very careful. What a heresy there, this, that. So the student said, "Don't worry. I learned in your base measures and your study hall for years. You didn't rub off so much. I didn't become such a great tzaddik. I didn't be so righteous. So if I go there, I'm not going to be so bad either." That was his logic. So the Balatanya said, "You're making a big mistake." He said, because impurity, how do you become impure? You touch something impure. Touch a dead animal, makes you impure. Right? Only by touch. Purity, you want purity? That you got to work at. That you got to work very hard at. But to become impure, don't think, "Oh, I'm going to be there. It's never going to affect me." Not true. Why? Because you can become impure just by touch. Right? Just by touch. Someone has asked, no, I have to do tshuva for listening to heretics. But you don't believe in the heretic speeches. Yeah, you should do tshuva for that. Listen to heretics. The problem, if you didn't know they were heretic, you don't need such great repentance. But if you knew they were heretic, you want to listen to them anyway. That depends. Depends why you want to listen to them. If you want to listen to answer them up or whatever, okay, maybe it's not necessarily an issue. But just to listen to them, yeah, that'd probably be a problem. Book is called The History of the Palestinian People in Ancient Times. Gog should have prior to 6,000 years, right? It for sure has to be within the 6,000 years. Timeline matters because the question of Messiah is going to come not post-war. It's going to come before. Everyone's going to acknowledge he's the Messiah during the war or even before the war. Right? Everyone's going to acknowledge. So therefore, yeah, it has to happen before the year 6,000. War for sure has to happen before the year 6,000. Because by that time, the Messiah already has to come. So, it could be 6 months before, a month before. I mean, probably not a month before, but let's say a year before, something like that. But it has to be within the 6,000 years, right? Any other questions? Maybe better study works of the Rambam about the brain than study psychology. Probably, in theory, maybe, but people had issues with the Rambam with Maimonides also because they, when he wrote the Guide for the Perplexed, which was an answer, trying to answer up, Jews that got caught up in the philosophy of Aristotle and Socrates and all that, and giving, trying to give answers for why we keep mitzvahs. In general, some say that you got to be careful with the Rambam also because he was influenced by philosophy, by secular philosophy. I mean, we study the Rambam, so we don't necessarily hold that per se, but even by the Rambam, you say even by the Rambam, is it better to study the Rambam than other things? Sure, right? Then, that's for sure, but that's not going to get you a degree. Right? If you want to drink in psychology, you're not studying the Rambam in general. Yeah. Any other questions here? Someone mentioned, the pastor classes didn't look into much, so you don't have to get involved in that much stuff. Okay, right? That's definitely better also, right? I don't think there's any question, right? I don't think there's any question about that. 1 second. Any other questions here? Person in heaven, the parents are in hell. Yeah, interesting question. Will the person in heaven be sad because of his parents? I can only imagine. Probably be more sad in this world than probably there, because there's a world of absolute truth. I don't, if they're in a world of absolute truth, I don't know if it's going to matter who's there, who's not there. Maybe they'll feel bad. I don't know. I haven't been in that world or seen anyone been in that world, as my Rebbe says, and come back. I don't know if they'll have any feelings of remorse. Oh, what happened to my parents? This and that. I don't know if they're worried about it. Hard to imagine if they see absolute truth. Is that going to matter? I don't think so. Doesn't seem like it. Yeah. Any other questions? I mentioned the Messiah's going to have a long life. I don't think so. Messiah's going to die like everyone else. That's why he's not going to live forever. In every generation, there's a Messiah, right? Whether he becomes the Messiah or not really doesn't matter. But someone in every generation has a spark of the Messiah. So, before that war of Gog and Magog, that Messiah for that generation is going to be in the world already. That you're right. You need to follow that timeline, but that's true. That is true. He will already be in the world before that. Yeah. Any other questions? All right, I'm going to stop here. I do this every Tuesday and Thursday, 10 o'clock Eastern Time, 5 o'clock Israel Time. Anyone has any questions, find me on Facebook at Rabbi Chaim Coffman, Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism, or orthodoxconversion.com. And you can find me on YouTube, Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism. There I get videos on Torah portion of the week, Q&As, Ethics of Our Fathers, Book of Leviticus, controversial issues. You want to send me an email, rabbichaimcoffman@gmail.com, RBBICHAIMCOFFMAN @gmail.com, whichever good beginning of the day, middle of the day, end of the day, depending on